如果想学好英文，不会连一遍都听不完吧？听完保证能在国外与母语者自然沟通。故事开始咯。
The fog came early that year. It slid through the streets of London like a living thing, soft and cold, hiding doors and faces. In Whitechapel, the fog mixed with smoke from factories and the smell of damp stone. The city was proud of its iron bridges and tall buildings. The rich spoke of progress and power. But in the East End, progress felt like a word meant for other people. Here, work was hard, pay was small. Eleanor Shaw pulled her shawl tighter as she walked down Dorset Street. She was 24, with dark hair pinned in a hurry and eyes that missed very little. She worked as a seamstress by day. At night, she sometimes walked other streets, doing work she did not speak of, even to herself. It was how she paid for her room and for her younger brother's food. "Ellie?" a voice asked, low and careful. She turned. Thomas Reed stood there, his cap pulled down, his coat worn thin at the elbows. He was a dock worker when there was work, and a messenger when there was not. He smiled when he saw her, but worry lived in his eyes. "You should not be out so late," he said. "You say that every night," Eleanor replied. "And every night, the streets are still full." Thomas nodded. "That is what frightens me." They walked together for a short way. Around them, women leaned against walls or stood in pairs. Some laughed too loudly. Some stared at nothing at all. Men passed by, their faces half hidden by fog and shadow. "Did you hear?" Thomas asked. "Another girl was found last week. Near Bucks Row." Eleanor felt her steps slow. "People talk too much." "This is different," he said. "They say she was cut badly." Eleanor said nothing. She had learned that silence could be safer than fear. Still, her hands shook inside her pocket. They parted near the corner. Thomas watched until she disappeared into the fog. Eleanor rented a small room above a baker's shop. The stairs smelled of yeast and old wood. She lit a candle and sat on her narrow bed. From the window, she could hear the city breathe, carts rolling, voices calling, a distant whistle from the river. She took out a small notebook. Inside were sketches of dresses she dreamed of making one day. Clean lines. Bright cloth. A life far from Whitechapel. She closed it and lay back, staring at the ceiling. Sleep came in broken pieces. The next morning, rain washed the streets but did not clean them. Inspector Arthur Hale stood near a crowd by the market. He was tall and thin, with a careful face and a voice that did not rise. He had been moved to Whitechapel only 2 months before. Some said it was a test. Others said it was a punishment. A constable leaned close. "Sir, the body was moved already." Hale nodded. "I know." He looked at the faces around him. Fear showed itself in many ways: anger, jokes, quiet stares. Women clutched their shawls. Men whispered. Hale had seen death before, but the East End carried it differently. Here, death felt close to hunger and cold. He noticed a woman watching him from across the street. She had dark hair and steady eyes. She did not look away when he met her gaze. Then she turned and was gone. That afternoon, Eleanor worked by the window at the sewing house. The needle moved in and out. The other women talked in low voices. "They say the police do not care," one said. "They say the killer walks free." Eleanor kept sewing. when the sun fell, fog returned. Eleanor stepped outside again. She told herself she would not stay long. Near Hanbury Street, she heard a sound, a soft cry, cut short. She froze. The fog pressed close, and the street seemed empty. Only the sound of her own breath. She turned to leave and nearly collided with a man stepping from the shadow. He was well dressed for the area, his coat clean, his gloves dark. His face was kind, almost gentle. "Are you lost?" he asked. "This is not a safe place for a woman alone." Eleanor felt a chill that had nothing to do with the fog. She stepped back. "I know my way." The man watched her go, his eyes calm, his smile fading as the fog swallowed her shape. From a nearby corner, Inspector Hale had seen the meeting. He had followed the man for 2 streets before losing him near the river. Hale stood still. The body was found just before dawn, when the street still belonged to shadows. A milk cart rolled into Mill Lane, its wheels loud in the quiet air. The driver, a thin man named George Hemsley, pulled his horse to a stop when he saw something dark near the brick wall. At first, he thought it was a bundle of old clothes. Whitebridge was full of those. Then he saw the hand. George stepped back, his breath sharp in his chest. "No," he whispered, though no one had asked him anything. 2 policemen stood at the lane. Constable Edwin Price tried not to look too long. He was new to the force, new to Whitebridge, and still believed that order could be kept with the right rules. This lane did not care about rules. The woman lay on her side. Her name, they would learn later, was Clara Finch. She was 32, worked nights cleaning rooms at the Crown House Inn, and sent most of her pay to her mother across the river. Her coat was thin. 1 shoe was missing. Price swallowed. "Could be a robbery," he said. "Or could be worse." They covered the body and told the crowd to move along. Most people did. Whitebridge had learned how to look away. Inspector Harold Grant arrived an hour later. He wore a neat coat and carried a notebook he used more for show than work. Grant bent down, asked a few questions, and stood again. "No signs of panic," he said. "No struggle." "So, an accident?" Price asked. Grant gave a small smile. "That's what we'll say for now." By noon, the newspapers had their story. Local woman found dead. The article was short. It named the woman, noted the time, and ended with a calm sentence about safety. Most readers nodded and turned the page. Only a few lowered their voices when Clara's name came up. "She worked nights," someone whispered. "Those hours aren't safe." "It's a hard town," another replied. "Always has been." At the Crown House Inn, Lydia Moore wiped the same table again and again. She had worked with Clara for 2 years. Clara laughed softly, never took more than her share, and always stayed late to help. "She was careful," Lydia said to the innkeeper. "She watched the streets." The innkeeper shrugged. "Careful doesn't mean lucky." That evening, Inspector Grant walked home past Mill Lane. The stones were clean now. Too clean. He stopped and looked around, his face tight. From across the street, a man stood in a doorway. He watched Grant, then turned and walked away, his steps slow and steady. The night settled in. The second body was found 4 nights later. This time, no one thought it was an accident. She lay near the river steps, where the fog was thick and the water whispered against stone. Her name was Mary Collins. She sold flowers in the daytime and slept where she could at night. Her hands were still stained with dirt and green stems. Like Clara, one shoe was missing. Inspector Harold Grant stood over the body, his jaw tight. He did not write anything in his notebook at first. He only looked. Same place in the body, Sergeant Wilcox said quietly. Same kind of cut. Grant nodded once. And no sign of a fight. Constable Price felt his stomach turn. You said the first one was nothing. Grant looked at him. His eyes were cold. I said we didn't know yet. By the end of the week, there was a third death. This woman was older. Her name was Ann Doyle. She cleaned fish at the docks and drank to sleep at night. She was found behind a row of empty houses. The cut was the same. The silence around her death felt louder than any scream. Now the streets were talking. People locked their doors earlier. Women walked in pairs or not at all. The market closed before dark. Mothers pulled children inside when the lamps were lit. It's not chance, Lydia Moore said at the Crown House Inn. Her voice shook as she spoke. 3 women. Same wounds. Same streets. The innkeeper wiped his hands on a cloth. Don't say it too loud. But the papers said it louder the next morning. The article was longer this time. It spoke of patterns. It asked questions. And at the bottom, in smaller print, it mentioned a letter. The letter arrived at the newspaper office just before dawn. No one saw who left it. The paper was clean. The writing was careful. It spoke of the streets as if they belonged to the writer. It ended with a name, written larger than the rest, Jack the Ripper. When Inspector Grant read it, his hands went still. That's what they'll call him now, Wilcox said. Whether it's real or not. Grant folded the letter. Names give power, he replied. And fear. But fear had already spread. That night, Lydia stood by the inn window, watching the fog roll in. Every shadow felt alive. Every footstep made her heart race. Across the street, a man paused under a lamp. He looked up, as if he knew he was being watched. For a moment, his face was clear, then the light flickered. The killer had a name at last. The letter arrived wrapped in fear. The paper boy saw it first and did not touch it. He stood there until the editor came down, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. It's for you, the boy said. I don't like it. The envelope was plain. No stamp. No return name. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The words were neat, almost polite. They spoke of the streets as if they were a game board. They laughed at the police for being slow and blind. At the bottom, written darker and larger than the rest, were 4 words, yours truly, Jack the Ripper. The editor felt his mouth go dry. He read it twice, then a third time. This will sell, he said. Men read it aloud on street corners. Women whispered it behind closed doors. Children dared each other to say it at night. The killer was no longer a shadow. He had a title now, sharp and easy to remember. Inspector Harold Grant stood in his office, the letter spread on his desk. Constable Price watched him closely. It could be a joke, Price said. Anyone could write this. Grant nodded. Yes. Or it could be him. And if it isn't? Then someone has given him a gift, Grant replied. A mask. Outside, fear moved faster than truth. Lydia Moore served drinks with shaking hands. The room was full, yet quiet. Every sound seemed too loud, a dock worker said. That makes it worse. Or better, another replied. You can't fight a ghost. But a man like that? Lydia cut in. With a name like a knife? The men fell silent. That night, the fog returned, thick and slow. Lamps burned low. Doors locked early. Lydia walked home with her coat pulled tight, her steps quick. She thought she heard someone behind her and turned, heart racing. The street was empty, but on the wall beside her door, without a small mark, scratched into the brick. Not words. Not yet. Just a sign that someone had been there. From an upper window across the street, a man watched her go inside. He stood very still, his face calm, as if listening to a private thought. Whitebridge had given the killer a name. And names, once spoken, do not fade easily. Inspector Harold Grant slept less each night. His office smelled of ink, damp paper, and cold tea. Maps of Whitebridge covered the walls, marked with pins and thin lines of string. They crossed each other in tight knots, like a mind pulled too far. None of it was clear. We have 6 men who could fit, Sergeant Wilcox said, standing by the desk. And 10 more who almost fit. Grant rubbed his eyes. And no proof. There were no clear prints. No tools left behind. People remembered shadows, tall shapes, quiet voices. Fear changed memories. Grant knew that, but the public did not care. Constable Price entered with a stack of newspapers. Sir, he said, uneasy. One paper claimed the killer was a doctor. Another said he was rich. A third hinted that the police were hiding the truth. They think we're lying. Price said. They think someone always is. Grant replied. Outside the station, a crowd had gathered. Men shouted. Women cried. Someone threw a stone that cracked against the wall. Bring him out, a voice yelled. We'll do your job for you. That night, a man named Samuel Crow was dragged from his room near the docks. He was strange, quiet, and walked alone at night. That was enough. They beat him until the rain washed the blood into the street. When the police arrived, Crow was barely breathing. Grant stood over him, his hands shaking with anger. This is what happens, Wilcox said softly, when fear decides the law. At the Crown House Inn, Lydia Moore listened as rumors filled the room. They say Jack writes to the papers for fun. One woman whispered, they say the police know who he is. Lydia wiped the counter again and again. She did not believe the stories, but she believed the fear behind them. Every face looked sharp now. Every smile felt wrong. Later, walking home, she saw 2 men following a third. Their voices were low, hard. She crossed the street and did not look back. In his office, Grant sat alone. He stared at the map until the lines blurred. We're chasing noise, he said to the empty room. And he's walking through it. On his desk lay a new envelope. No name. Grant did not open it right away. Outside, Whitebridge whispered with anger and doubt. And somewhere within that noise, the killer waited, unseen, untouched, and very much aware. The final night came with a hard wind. People stayed inside if they could. Lamps were turned low. Even the river sounded careful, as if it did not want to be heard. Inspector Harold Grant stood near Blackstone Court with his coat pulled tight. Word had reached the station just before midnight. A woman had been found alive, barely, near the old warehouse by the tracks. Her throat was cut, but not deep enough. Footsteps. A shout. Something scared him. Grant nodded. Or something ended it. They walked through the court. Blood darkened the stones. The marks were familiar now. Too familiar, this one will cause trouble, Sergeant Wilcox said. She lived. Grant did not answer. The woman's name was Rose Calder. She washed clothes for dock workers and slept behind the laundry shop. When Grant spoke to her later, her eyes were wide and empty. He was calm, she whispered. Like he had all the time in the world. Did you see his face? Grant asked. Rose shook her head. No. But he smelled clean. Like soap. That detail stayed with Grant. The papers exploded the next morning. Anger rose. People demanded arrests. Names were shouted. Some were dragged through the streets, then let go when nothing fit, and then, nothing happened. One night passed. Then another. No body. No letter. People waited for the next scream. Then they waited for the waiting to end. Lydia Moore noticed it while closing the inn. The silence felt heavier than fear. Men still came in, but they talked about work again. About weather. About football scores. He's gone, someone said. No, another replied. He's just resting. Inspector Grant kept working. He followed old leads. He questioned the same men. He stared at the same map. Constable Price stood in the doorway of Grant's office. Sir, he said, unsure. What if that was the last one? Grant looked up slowly. Then we failed to stop him, he said. And failed to understand him. Price hesitated. Or maybe something stopped him. Grant said nothing. That night, Grant walked alone through Whitebridge. The fog was lighter now. The streets looked almost normal. Near the river, he paused. On the stone wall, half scrubbed but still visible, was the mark Lydia had seen weeks ago. Someone had tried to erase it. Grant touched the stone. It felt cold. Behind him, footsteps echoed once. Grant turned. The street was empty. Whitebridge breathed again, but not freely. Somewhere between relief and doubt, the city waited. And Inspector Grant knew one thing: stories like this did not always end. Sometimes, they only went quiet.
如果你喜欢今天的故事，别忘了按下赞，让我知道你喜欢这样的英文故事哦。想看更多简单又好懂的英文故事吗？快去看看我的其他影片，跟着故事慢慢变厉害。今天你学到哪个单字或句子最喜欢呢？或者你想看我下一集讲哪个故事，都可以在留言区打卡告诉我，我会看每一则留言哦。别忘了每天来打卡学英文，慢慢你会变得更厉害。